people, what's good? It's your girl Namaiwa, CEO and founder of Girl Grind UK, and we are back with Girl on Her Grind Series 2, 5 years on from when we launched the organisation. So today we're going to meet Catherine Joy White, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about her before she joins us. Catherine Joy White is an award-winning actor, filmmaker, author, activist, gender equality expert, and the CEO and founder of Kusini Productions. She's been honoured as a member of the Forbes 30 Under 30 class of 2022, longlisted for Albright's Innovator Trailblazer Award, and has heralded as one of the 5 activists to watch by the Trouble Club. Her debut book, This Thread of Gold, is a celebration of Black womanhood and was published to critical acclaim in the UK in June 2023 by Dialogue Books. And the final chapter is being produced into a film starring Gugu Mbatha-Raw MBE. Through Kusini Productions, she has produced a slate of multi-award-winning films, including 54 Days, which she also wrote, directed and starred in alongside Celia Imrie. 54 Days was selected for over 50 film festivals worldwide and received BAFTA and Oscar acclaim before being sold to American Airlines. Let's meet Catherine and find out about her grind and how she's doing it. So hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really well and excited for this conversation.
No.
And to just talk about your grind and how you do it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. So do you want to tell the people either listening or watching like who you are and what you do?
Yes, let's do it. So I'm Catherine Joy White. Some people call me Kat. I mean, Catherine probably.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm a mission-driven individual. So I'm on a mission to kind of elevate voices of unheard people, and that typically looks like women and Black women. And my work to kind of achieve that is an actor, a writer, an author, a filmmaker, a gender equality expert, and founder CEO of Kusini Productions, which is a film production company dedicated to champion voices of Black women.
Wow. So you don't need to take that in. That's excellent. So just as a side question, is there other avenues that you're going to multi-sphere to try to combat that in the future, do you think? Or you like found a footing in using creativity and literally your words and the ideas in your mind to express that?
Yeah, it's so funny because I feel like we're always told growing up, you need to decide what it is that you want to be, what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
And I kind of always struggled with that because I knew that my parents tease me still, and my sisters, because my childhood hero was Emmeline Pankhurst, like founder of the suffragette movement.
Yeah.
And it was Rosa Parks as well. So I was always like fascinated by these women who changed the world, but that doesn't really translate to a job. So when you were like doing those careers things in school and stuff, I didn't really know how to translate what I wanted to do into an actual job. So I think I spent quite a long time doing loads of different things and maybe being a bit lost in some ways, and then kind of found activism through my work with the United Nations. And I was like, this feels great. This feels really good. I feel like I'm making a difference. But at the same time, I felt like I was trapped within a system that didn't necessarily allow me. I just felt like I had more that I could do. And I've always been writing and always been performing and doing these things, but I never really saw that as a job, I suppose. But then when I went on to studying, I was able to start doing plays and start performing and realize that there's actually a way that you can bring these worlds together, I think. But I'm still spending a lot of my time. Only now people are starting to say things like, oh, wow, how do you do all the things you do? Rather than when are you going to make a decision and decide what you're going to do when you grow up? It's like, well, I'm grown. And
that's really interesting because I think it goes really nicely into what the word activist means, and thinking about Emmeline Pankhurst or Rosa Parks and how you almost label what they've done. It seems to be quite retrospective. So it's after the radical thoughts of, I need to do this because it feels good to me, or it's a becoming space that, or it's something I just must stand up for. Then after it's dubbed something and it becomes, oh, the questions are more leading into like, we trust that your creative decisions are your decisions and you are who you are, and whatever you do next is going to be creative, as opposed to being like, yeah, who are you, and decide. I find that really interesting. You kind of answered one of my first questions about early life. Was there anything else in your early life or growing up through school that kind of signaled to you that there was a very untrodden path that you was about to take?
Yeah, I think I grew up in a small town in the East Midlands called Northampton, and people weren't really doing much that felt different, if that makes sense. So everyone, and lots of people that I went to school with are still in the same town, and same school that we went to and all that kind of thing. So I think there was somehow a feeling of not fitting in, which I think a lot of creatives or a lot of people who've gone on and done something a bit different have had as children and teenagers. But it's funny because now, so the day my book came out in the UK and my book launch,
Can't wait to get into that.
no spoilers yet, we'll get into it later. But this is just kind of relevant. My dad found an old school report where when I was 5 years old, and I'd written like, Mrs. Otley, that's my teacher, Mrs. Otley says when I grow up, I'm going to be author.
Wow.
I was like, so even from the age of 5, I somehow had that dream or vision of writing books and doing this. I do remember I used to like write our class assemblies and do all these weird things, which obviously at school made me like, why are you just you just go and play in the playground? But like I did play in the playground, but I also was always writing stories and creating worlds in my head.
Yeah. Well, big up Mrs. Otley and your dad for keeping that, because sometimes that positive reinforcement from early, or even just being able to like have someone speak on you like that, is really affirming. And it's not surprising that things like that then come up in your womanhood and in as the pursuit of you pursuing yourself and wanting to become like that manifests into the very things that people could see in you and that you could probably not articulate as the 5-year-old.
Yeah, and it is powerful, isn't it? Like I think a lot of us don't really think about how the influence we can have on the younger generation.
Yeah.
But we can speak, words to a 5-year-old child that they carry with them for the rest of their life.
Yeah. So do you feel that you come from a people, a family, a community of like leaders? Because as the CEO of Kusini Productions, which from obviously I've been a fan and following your career for a very long time, but becoming the leader of something very strong and powerful and that has a big voice, did you spot that in some of the early years as well, like in terms of discovering who you are in that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think my family are such a huge influence on what I do in a way that when you're a kid, you don't necessarily look at it and think like that. But I mean, looking now at aunties, grandparents, even my sisters, my cousin, I'm so inspired and elevated by the people around me and by people who have just, you tell them what you're going to do and they don't look at you and say, you're never going to do that, are you mad? They look at you and say, yes, wow, how can I help? Bring me up with you. I'm going to bring you up with me. And even if you look at like, if we take, for example, 54 Days, which maybe get into later as well, but that's your song now is played on that film around the world.
Yeah, I watched it on my flight to Texas the other day. I've took pictures of it. I forgot to send it to you. Yeah. And I was literally like, I sat there and was like, wow.
That's mad though. When you think from us, like just 2 kids performing to now doing what we're doing, I think there is just something so important in having that support system around you. But I mean, I guess it doesn't come for everyone from their family, and I know a lot of people don't have that supportive blood family environment, but then I think it is finding the chosen family who the people who you can tell them this is what I'm going to do and they don't question it.
And you know what's even more interesting, just hearing that word chosen family in this context, because it is used as something to hurdle for queer communities, and it's about people that often feel ostracized because of who they are. And I guess in some ways a lot of creatives, even if they do or don't have the blood family push, you still kind of always get back to that chosen family of like, I need to build my team, build my creators, build my networks, and do that in a safe way as well.
Yeah.
So as Kusini Productions has been developing, so say you've got your name, you've got your idea, you've got the blueprint, what do you do next? How do you start building that creative chosen family around you to amplify your voice? And second to that, are you comfortable with that at the time of beginning?
Okay, the second question, definitely not,
Okay.
because, you know, so at the point of founding that company, I'm an actor who's recently graduated. I'm about to go into a job in the West End. COVID happens. The world shut down. Suddenly I find myself, I was meant to have 5 months of lovely, paid, very exciting work, and suddenly I've got nothing.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm like, what happened now? What do I do? And that was where the idea to make my first short film came from. I didn't have an idea of founding a business and founding a company and becoming a film producer and a CEO. I had an idea of getting a film. Exactly. That's also it. Like, life sometimes surprises you and you have to just go with it. But so no, it wasn't comfortable, because then I made this film and I was like, oh, I really like this. I see that there's more I can do here. I can start to bring other people up, tell stories that aren't being told, have crews that look like the people around me rather than the crews that I see in the industry, which are mostly middle-aged white men.
Yeah.
How do I do that? But that involved researching how to set up a business. It involved registering it on Companies House. It involved getting down with taxes and things that just were not comfortable. So there was like this creative drive. I know what I'm doing, but there was also a sense of, am I doing something that's beyond me? Little did I know that within a year, that first year, I would have made, I think, 4 or 5 films. The next year, suddenly I'm named Forbes 30 under 30 list. The next year, films are like take around the world. The next thing I know, now I've got my first feature film shooting next year.
So hold on, let's just pause there a second, because like, that's insane.
It is, objectively, yeah. It was a quick turnaround.
How do you cope with the consistent progression, especially as, well, you sound as if from when you were young, you've always been consistently progressing, whether that be in school, as in like studies, or whether that's in discovering more parts as you go of who you are. But how do you deal with more people knowing who you are and more success and the overlap of work just continuing? Because that's new at that point, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have to have a really frank conversation here. We have to talk about capacity.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about balancing ambition and passion and drive with a care and a compassion for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So important.
it's so important.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you set up your own business and you're the one driving it, you're the face of it, you're the person that is seemingly endless energy and going to get things done, what happens when life happens? I know you relate to it.
Yeah.
I know you know what I mean. And I think that's the thing that we do not hear spoken about enough. Yes, you can put your all into something, but you have to know when you need to sort of take a step back. Or, and this is when I admire you so much, when you build a team around you, a team who are equally brilliant at their roles, so that you're not the one doing everything.
Yeah. I think you get to a place where you can't. And I think whatever obstacles you're up against, whether that's like regional challenges, financial, health, invisible illness, anything of that sort, or even self-esteem and like confidence, you need to understand that you have to build safety, you have to pick a chosen family, you know? I think the hardest thing with that then, which I'll ask but maybe might get cut out, but I think it's about the payment of that, because I think the value of people and the value of time and creativity is like a trilogy of like, okay, but at the root of all of this is like money.
Yeah.
Because it's like the idea could be fantastic, it could be original, but to get it and bring it to a pure vision of what you're happy with to present to the world, that takes money and people.
Yeah.
And then having people to support also requires money, because not everybody's going to be motivated by passion or activism, desire. Some people are like, where's my coin?
Yeah.
So how do you, or did you find that easy to do? Was the first thing to almost beg, borrow, steal, ask family, call friends, lean into networks? Like, if you've got a shortage in either people or money or vision, how do you think you could navigate that?
Yeah.
And did you ever come across that for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So my very first film that I made, I crowdfunded. So I set up a Kickstarter and I spent every single waking moment, when I tell you it was a full-time job and then some, to raise it was £10,000 the budget for that film. And it had been a month, because Kickstarter, they give you like a limit.
Okay.
And I asked everyone I knew, and then I didn't know enough people to fund it, so I was like, okay, where do I go? So I started researching, and this was about kind of race and female reproductive rights in the 18th century. So I found this like niche audience of like historians and random people, and it was a full-time job. I wrote to everyone, I begged, and I said, please, £5, if you can't give me £5, please share it, because you might know someone who will. And eventually I built that first budget that way. From there, though, you can't do another crowdfunder because you've already done that. So then I started to get innovative. I would write to people who looked like they were interested in the sort of work I was doing and said, I've got this project, can you help support it? But it was always project-based at that point. I made a pact with myself. I was like, I never want to ask anyone to work for less than living wage.
Yeah. Or even just the equity standards to just hold up against that and just be a good employer, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because especially in the creative industries, especially when you're young and you're up and coming, you're not paid for you. And there's this idea that because, you know, you should be lucky to be there, you want to work for free just because of like the passion of it.
Yeah.
Which I actually think is really harmful.
Yeah, it's problematic.
It's problematic. Like, I get it. And there are some things where I do feel like my current TV show that I'm working on that I can't talk about, but and my agent called me and told me I got this job. And she was like, I'm not sure, you know, we're just working out the fee. I was like, I'll do it for free. I was like crying. I was like, I'm free. She's like,
I understand what.
You won't do it for free. You're gonna get your coin.
Yeah.
But there's that feeling that you're lucky to be there, which isn't true. Like, any work environment is lucky to have you, and that's what we need to remember.
Yeah. So interesting that, like, call it 10 years deep into your career, that feeling of I'll just do it for free because I just want a piece comes up, because I know that you have a strong like compass of your worth, and I find that interesting, and I think that that's powerful to people listening who are maybe at different points in their career.
Yeah.
To say, you know what, that's kind of okay.
Yeah.
The positive for you in your scenario is that you have someone that's advocating for you as well as you advocating for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that is really important, but obviously that doesn't happen in every career, and because I've so many different roles. So when I'm in the position where I have to talk about it for myself, so in my gender activism, so when I was with the UN and when I'm doing consultancy work and they ask me what are your rates, I find that really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But we have to get comfortable with talking about money. And you know what else is really kind of important, and I've noticed this lately, so touring my book around, and one of the authors, when I was at Cheltenham Festival last month, asked me, what did you get for your advance for your book? I was like, oh wow. But she said, I go around and I ask people because it's so important, and without that, there's been a lot of kind of certain people getting loads huge advances, other people getting less, and the only way we find out is if we talk about it.
It's interesting. I think, as you know, I'm coming from the music industry, and it's quite hush hush in the sense that those are like unspoken no-goes of not asking another artist what deal they got or how much they were paid on the booking, and lineups the way they are, they signify higher pay to low pay. To me, that when I see them, that's what I read.
Right.
That's my assumption anyway. I don't know if it's all true, but why wouldn't the headline have been the height? Yeah. So it's interesting that, like, how uncomfortable that is, and it's quite deep actually, because I think that since we're talking in some ways about gender equality, and the things different genders experience, I think that that's how a lot of traumatic and problematic and dangerous and wrong things happen, because we're almost ushered to not speak. We're kind of siloed off in, you don't speak about money because you're made to feel that it's like rude or it's presumptuous or pretentious, or that you're not getting paid and you're embarrassed and you don't want to say that. And that trickles into other big problems in the industry, whether that's about different forms of abuse, whether that's I'm going to leave that one there because
it's really also real. But that's the thing. Knowledge is power in every sense, whether it's knowledge about yourself or also knowledge about others. So how can you help someone if you don't know what they need help with? That's firstly something that's really important, and that translates not just to money but to everything. You know, not being afraid to ask for help.
Sure.
But also it's, knowledge is power in the sense that you need to understand your own worth and know in order to be able to ask for it next time, because people won't just give it to you, unfortunately.
It's mad that that person who asked you that is the radical one in that store, just for asking, like, oh, hey, I just want to know.
Yeah, I didn't say it in the moment because I just felt kind of uncomfortable and nervous, and I thought, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
But then later on, we had that conversation. Like, I'm really glad I was just honest.
Good for them.
Yeah.
I really want a piece of that.
Yes. I don't know how I'll take it on. I'm going to try and do it. I don't know if I will.
Yeah.
It is important.
It does feel cheeky, though.
It
does feel cheeky to ask for information about things that are going to help you. And I don't know where that comes from or why it's so heavy.
Yeah.
You know?
That in itself is also something we need to unlearn, because it's fair and it's transparent.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me then about Forbes 30 Under 30, because I feel like for a lot of people who are in the business world and entering it as a new, fresh entrepreneur with an idea and big dreams, you hear things in the peripherals of like the sector and the business world like Forbes 30 Under 30. And there is also Forbes 50 Under 50.
It's so bad.
Yeah. It's excellent. I was just like, ooh, maybe because I'm past 30 now. Then you're going to be on a wait and I go away. And it was like, so I've got some graft to do. But how does an accolade like that is so perceived as prestigious and something to work towards, how does getting that feel?
I'm not going to lie, that was a moment of such pride.
Yeah.
I could not believe it when I did it, because you don't know. I didn't know. I woke up that morning and I had all these messages and I was added to this Slack group. I was like, huh? Yeah. So that is just so shocking. But in a way, I don't think in that moment I knew what it meant. I was just in shock and felt so honoured.
Yeah.
But now I begin to understand that with great power comes great responsibility. With something like that, where an organisation like Forbes has recognised my work, I then have a responsibility to make sure that not only am I working in a way that is authentic to why I was given that honour in the first place, but I'm also using it to pull people up. So I hope I do.
Yeah, you do.
I try and do that in everything I do. That's always how I'm thinking. So for me, and then of course, the further you go into your career, the more. And I never want to get to a point where I'm like, oh, just another award.
Yeah. Maybe that will be time to like sit down on a beach somewhere and really think about what's going on. Yeah.
But that's it. I think it has to be about not taking any of it for granted, but also not just taking it as a thing for the self. It's like there are so many people who contributed to me being in that position to be able to get that in the first place.
Yeah.
There are so many people who are doing amazing work out there right now who I can help bring them up so they can be in a position to get an award like recognition like that in the future.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I navigate that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So when I want to talk about this thread of gold. When I was reading about what has been said about the book and looking online to tell people to be directed to go and purchase it after watching the interview, I was on one of the websites that sells your book online and in store, and it said, you know, when you like watch something, it says you also might like.
Yeah.
So I started screaming because You Might Like Becoming by Michelle Obama came up after your book.
Wow.
And I sat down and I was like, rah, that's a big You Might Like. Your words are in the caliber of writers and prolific women like Michelle Obama. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Okay. How does that feel in this moment?
Do you know what? This is really serendipitous because earlier on you said something about becoming.
Sure.
And I wanted to say to you about this book, but then the conversation moved on.
Yeah.
And there's a line in the book where in the final chapter, which is Letter to My Daughter, which is a letter I've written to the daughter of mine I have, which is now becoming a film, where I say, and in these magical, messy years of becoming, I pray that you don't work too hard. You remember to see the sunsets and sleep and sometimes to say no.
Yeah.
And just seeing that all of these things that make up our lives, like these chaotic, crazy, hard, beautiful times, they're all part of our becoming, and seeing that as a constant work in progress.
Yeah.
Inspired by Michelle Obama.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that is amazing. I'm
Yeah.
so inspired by her, and
Yeah.
I think she is just.
But the thing is, there's going to be people somewhere in the world doing an interview and realizing that they're inspired by you because you're. Yeah, because the reality of that is that they're placed side by side. They're seen as equal in a caliber of people that want to think like that or want to be probed with that type of discovery about who they are, you know? And the letter to my daughter thing's amazing because when birthing projects and ideas, you're also in that creating silos of teams. There's people in there. There's birthing the creativity, but also other people in the process because I know you to have people who are emerging around you as well as people who are really established, and that bringing through is all part of the becoming. So you might have many daughters because I feel like with that, you're speaking to so many people in saying, sometimes say no, pause, reflect, take your time. You know, there's a lot of daughters that have now become.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
So okay, if you're wanting to write a book, from your process, how would you like explain how do you write a book? How do you get out to the world? Like what do you would do?
Yeah. So with nonfiction, you can sell a nonfiction book on a proposal, which is where you kind of like break down the book in complete detail, and you've written the first 3 chapters, but you don't have to have the whole book written.
Okay.
But with a novel, a fiction book, you need to have written it already, and then you take it to normally an agent and then to publisher. But before you get to that point,
It's quite intense.
it's intense. This is number 1 on the list of how to write a book. You need to be fully behind what you're writing about. You need to just be ready to give.
And that's without like an editor at that point.
Yeah.
Bringing it to.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a labour of love.
It's a labour of love.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think, just finding time each day to write is advice I'll give most people, because not everyone can just go away and take like a month off and write. I certainly couldn't do that. I had a full-time job at the UN. I had all my other commitments. So I was writing in spare moments, in evenings, in early mornings, weekends. You have to be, as with anything when you're setting up, you have to be fully committed to it and behind it.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have the luxury of huge amounts of money to just go and. My dream would be to just go and live on an island somewhere for 3 months, write my notes. That's my dream. I keep saying I'm going to do it. I'm like, with what money? No, I need to keep.
Well, let's hope and pray that it's the money from the last book.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So you've got the book in whichever form, whether it be for nonfiction or fiction, as you just said. And then what?
So then you really need an agent. I mean, you probably don't need an agent. I'm sure there are ways where you can, maybe if you've got a particular presence online and you're an expert in a particular topic already, you might be approached.
Yeah.
That's happening more and more. So let's say you've got like, you're got a thing about ADHD and you're like huge on TikTok, and you're probably going to be approached. They'll be like, have you ever thought about writing a book?
Okay.
So there's that kind of route in. But otherwise, if you don't have that, you probably need an agent who will then work with you on your manuscript, take it to editors. You work with publishing houses and sell it on your behalf.
Sure.
And then you hopefully get a few offers, and then you have to decide who you go with. So you're looking at how they see your book, how they're going to market it, whether they get the vision of it. Then it's a long process. Then that happens, and then there's a year or more normally where you're going through all the publicity, marketing, cover design, and then publication date.
Yeah.
And you were with me on the date that I helped the US. It was cool.
I feel like we screamed on that roof, ate Caesar salad and popped champagnes. Because you wanna celebrate that. That was such a blessing and a beautiful moment to share.
That's one of the most beautiful moments of my life. And I think if I wasn't with you as well, again, this is where marking things, not just letting life pass away, but taking it to market and being with someone that you love and somebody that you trust, and you can just know how far you've come, and together just say, this has happened.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
And mark that moment.
Sure. And also to add to that, literally right now, the context of where we was in Los Angeles. We were there for 54 days at PAF now.
Yeah.
And you cleaned up again. And it was like, we were there to experience, celebrating the fruit of your work, and then also just in a moment of like more things sticking to you because that's the energy that we was definitely in and you on. So
yeah, and I do think in that time it was an era of just like, let's see what happens. Like I feel like we felt really open to what life could bring us, and that did bring things our way. And I think that is actually so important, to just have an optimism and a curiosity about like, maybe I'm going to go here and try this, and I don't know whether it's going to pay off, but trusting and having faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess that brings us kind of almost full circle to the early years of where that's stemming from for you, or what it sounds like. There is a consistent layer of like new things that build up your connection to art and to the world, and potentially to spirit in whatever format. But that being embedded really early to be like, well, yeah, I can do this and I can be that. I think it's just beautiful when it manifests. You know, you see the fruits of it in like physical form. I really connect with this subject and love that it's brought forward in your work. But whether it's like suicide prevention work or whether you're talking about water pollution, your work blends art and activism seamlessly. And I kind of want to talk about Look Up and the importance of that work. But I also want to kind of know, like, how do you decide what to apply your creative choices, whether that be through writing or acting or producing a film around that concept? How do you decide what is the creative outlet to tell that story? And then how do you decide that this is something to move on?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Is it evoking your mind and it's something that never leaves your thoughts? Is it hit you straight in the heart? Like, how do you decide that?
Yeah, that is actually an incredible question. I think I'm very, not impulse driven is not the right thing, but I'm quite instinctive. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about, like, yes, my work is actress, but I'm not thinking about issues. It's more like a response to something that has happened to me or to someone around me, and I will feel a need to do something. So 54 Days, which looks at kind of healing after losing someone to suicide, came because I lost my friend to suicide during the pandemic. And I started swimming in this lake near where I lived as like the only way of trying to process that, I guess. And in the wake of doing that, I was kind of like, there is a message here. And I looked everywhere for something about like, how do you heal from this kind of grief? And I couldn't find anything. Like, there was no film I could see, no TV show, anything that looked at suicide was really, it was like glamorizing it almost. So that was how that came about. And then when I had that idea in the middle of the night, I was like, this is a film. Wrote the first script within a few days, and then I was obsessed and fixated, and I did not, I lived and breathed getting that off the ground. From the moment I wrote the first draft in about March to the day we shot it in the shoot in September, and then premiering it later that year, like I was just fixated. And I think similarly with, well, Look Up is different because that was a campaign documentary. That was my first documentary I've made. And I made it for World Suicide Prevention Day. But again, I just thought the time is right for there to be a hopeful story, narrative around people. And so that interviewed 3 suicide survivors. But what was it that kept them here, and how do they continue to look for something positive?
Right.
And again, I turned that around really, really quickly, because maybe 2 weeks before I was just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it happen. And found the interviewees, and kind of just made it. And it was quite simple. That wasn't really trying to do anything too technical. I just wanted the focus to be on their hopeful stories. So I think I trust, if I have a feeling in my heart that the time is now to tell a story, I trust that. I don't overthink things.
Okay.
If I overthought things, I wouldn't get them done. And I know a lot of times that's easier said than done, but I think if I have a sense that something is right, I follow it. And I do believe that work that comes from your heart will always connect. People always connect with it because it's on it.
Real.
It's real, yeah.
That's amazing. So so we talked a little bit about care before, in the process of like building, creating and like setting up business or deciding about work, but what's your aftercare? So like you spend 9 months on a project. Do you pause to have aftercare? And there's no judgment to you or to anyone who's always on to the next thing. But do you pause? Do you go to the next thing immediately? Yeah, what's the aftercare?
Yeah, I never pause.
Okay.
I never ever pause. It's something I want to work on, and I'm in the process as well now of getting a diagnosis for ADHD, and I know that's, you know, it's very typical of this sense of always being on to the next thing and needing that kind of dopamine, I think, of all of that. But yeah, I mean, being really candid, I did get really burnt out the start of last year.
Okay.
Was just severely burnt out and overwhelmed and couldn't stop because I was in a show and my book was coming out and there were so many things that didn't allow me to stop. But what I did was I left the UN, so then wasn't working full time for the UN anymore, and tried to just scale back a bit. And of course life has now happened again and I'm back where I was before. But I'm not so burnt out because I've put some other mechanisms in place. Like I now have a virtual assistant who can help me with my inbox and help me with.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I think.
Do you think between, if you were reflecting back, the moments of joy to pause and celebrate, there maybe the pause associates a length of time, but maybe the pause is just in the moment of the time to celebrate?
I love that.
Because it does. You think about pause and you think about taking rest, and in the context of like creative arts sector, pause might feel like, oh, I ain't got 3 weeks to sit down and look at the wall. Like, got to crack on, you know what I mean? So maybe it's in those smaller moments, and maybe planning more smaller things makes it feel consistent. It's something my therapist had said to me a while back, the first therapist, which I actually argued with. Oh, yeah, because like, you know, I'm obviously gonna do that, and then I found one that was right. But there was one thing that she and it's not because they agree with me. They definitely challenged me. It was just like, yeah, whatever. You know, to the point is to not rest from your work, is to rest in it. And I think there's something about that moment of pausing to celebrate and continue and enjoying the moment, catching the sunlight as you're walking in. Also, the sun is glistening on you perfectly right now. But like the smaller moments that they do manifest into big moments of, I can continue, I can crack on because I've got that flow within what I'm doing within my work.
You know, the best piece of it, or one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given, and it was actually just by a GP when I called them and I was like, I just don't know what to do anymore. I can't cope.
Yeah.
And he said to me, resilience is about having something to expand into.
Wow.
And it's, every time I think about that, because I'm like, how can I do the thing that I believe is my purpose if I don't have anywhere left to grow and to go? So when I get to that point where I'm like, I have nothing left, I know that I'm not able to do I have to do it anymore. So it's just about like scaling back. And I do think you're right, those moments like that rooftop, that LA rooftop, maybe that was the pause. That we're like, here's a moment. Yes, we feel the champagne, but here's a moment.
It's true. And I guess that's also a signifier maybe to yourself, to me, to other people who are creating ideas and projects, that can the idea go? You know, because it's also like, can the creativity, can the inspiration carry you through the length of what it is you need to do? Because you've got to have the vim for it, and that includes the vim for yourself. But like, it would be hard to do all the things you've done if there wasn't that expansion in it. You know,
and I think to all creatives as well, anyone who's listening, you know, you have to give so much of yourself. You sort of pour out from yourself. And at some point, if you just keep doing that, you're probably going to be kind of empty. So I think there is something about just taking those moments to put it back in, whether that is a holiday or an actual rest, or whether it's like a coffee with your friend, or it's your favorite TV show, or it's a yoga class, or it's a bath, or whatever it is. There's that thing that like allows you to pour back into yourself, because I think otherwise we're just constantly pouring into other people, and then there'll be nothing left.
Yeah. Speak to them.
Speak to them.
So if you was to leave a listener with one piece of gold, what would it be? Just drop it in the thread of gold that everyone needs to go and purchase and listen to the wonderful audiobook.
Well, I already said earlier when I was filming some social media stuff here, keep grinding, keep shining, which I didn't write. I can't take the credit for. I think you wrote that, did you, Adia? Someone from the Girl Grind team wrote that.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't take the credit, but what I do think that says to me, the keep grinding, keep shining. So also I used to always say shine bright like Cat White.
Yeah.
I'm sort of putting that to, I'm like, I just love that. But I think like find the core essence of who you are and that thing that only you have, because that is unique to you and nobody else.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, no one can. And have your vision in mind, your purpose, you're purpose driven, you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. But find those moments where you can just shine and like let yourself come to fruition, enjoy it, live in that moment. And remember that you're not here just to grind. You're here to also kind of find a way to lift people with you and lift yourself as well.
I know we're supposed to be wrapping up, but that's really nice to hear you say that, because I think the perception of being on a grind is that it is that relentless hustle, that it's hard, that it's masculine, that it's sticky. And there's something about Girl Grind and even the essence of the podcast and why I would want people to connect with us right now is to redefine what that is.
Yes.
Is to shine bright like Cat White, because you are defining it for yourself.
Yes.
You're in the decision maker, or you're the one holding the pencil, being able to design what a grind is, what a healthy one is, what a productive one is for yourself.
Exactly. You're crafting it, you're creating it. You're not following someone else's template. This is your grind. And you can grind and look cute.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me.
You can grind and be sexy. You can grind and be kind. You can grind, be calm. You can grind and be chilled. You can grind and be mad. You define it for yourself.
Yeah. Someone needed to hear that.
Someone needed it.
No, yeah. Thank you so much for, coming to Birmingham and coming to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me. This has been honestly beautiful. I feel really restored from it.
Amazing. Thank you. God bless you. God bless you.